Just an old garbage bag to be put in the street, huh? Huh? These are the worst years, I'll tell you. I'm afraid to look in the mirror. Afraid I'm gonna see some old lady staring back at me with gray hair. It's like those old ladies in the park. Their bundles and their black shawls, waiting for the coffin. I mean, I'm only 24. And what am I going to do with myself? Gloomy, disorderly, wildly solitary. I do not associate with anyone. Avoid even conversation. Try not to look at anyone, retreating more and more into my corner. For I have known the eyes already, known them all. The eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase. And when I am formulated, sprawling on a pin, pinned and wriggling on the wall, how should I begin to spit out the buttons of my days and ways? We don't even know where the living lives anymore, or what it is, or what its name is. You leave us alone for 1 second, and we shall instantly become confused and lost. I mean, we don't know what to join, what to love, what to hate, what to respect, what to despise. We even feel it's too much of a burden to be men. Men with real bodies, real blood of our own. Oh, we deem this a disgrace, and instead try to be some general, impossible humans. We're stillborn. It would seem we are approaching an age where our senses and our minds will no longer respond to moderate stimulation. I can know so much more. I mean, I could experience so much more. I want to see gamma rays. You know, I want to hear X-rays. I want to smell dark matter. I mean, I can't even begin to express these things properly because I have to conceptualize these complex ideas using this stupid, limiting spoken language, but I know that I want to reach out with something other than this prehensile pause and feel the wind of a supernova flowing over me. And then squeeze the universe into a ball and roll it towards some overwhelming question. To say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all. I will tell you all.
What is that?
I can't imagine. It's impossible to say exactly what I mean. As if a magic lantern through the nerves and patterns on the screen. Input from all organs. Seizures, uncontrolled electrical storms within the brain. Bodies flailing and reaching out, and holding on to one another.
our minds will no longer respond to minor stimulus. We seem to be approaching an age of growth. Sometimes it appears that we're reaching a period when our senses and our minds will no longer respond to minor stimulus. We seem to be approaching an age of growth.
Delivered courtesy of the Center for Progress and Prevention. Today we face a national crisis. People have taken to dancing without rest. Thousands have died. Be on the lookout for early symptoms: chest pains, convulsions, hallucinations, visions, trembling, twitching, jumping, and hopping about. Venture out at your own peril.
Here comes the unavoidable sun with my head. Who was responsible for sound, and at what point did that come in? In other words, did designers work with the sound was, for me, it was sort of what I designed off of initially, because it's just, the first time we really came into the room with performers, I pulled out my phone and taped the piece. That was my section. And then sort of took it away and designed off of that. And the sound has so much to do with what the video becomes, that it certainly played heavily for me. And then the sound shifted actually a couple days ago, and so it majorly changed my design. The second half of my design worked majorly. So that was a huge part of my process.
I sound designed it. To me, sound is a large part of how I direct the actors. And yeah, there were some literally it was like German techno before. And poor Bill had like created this amazing, moving, rhythmic thing that was first on beat and then off beat. It was awesome. And then I had this moment where I thought, I don't think we're really going for German techno. So I think we're gonna have to change this to be something much sparser. And everyone was really game about those kinds of shifts, which was great.
You know, it's one of the things about this particular process. We gave them a week in the room, which is not a long time, but it was long enough for Sanaz to make change as a director, to make major changes. Like, I don't want the room to face this way. I want it to be this way. And if that's one of the things we do at the VLD, we try to give artists time in the space. And if you don't have time, you have to go with the first idea. This is probably the third or...
So many. I mean, I can't even remember when we came in and went, to be honest. And I mean, I have to thank VLD in a huge way because I've never been supported in this way. Our company has never gotten this much support in such a generous and positive and for us lengthy amount of time in terms of being in here for 24 hours a day for 7 days with the equipment that we were given, you know. And it was honestly like being given that much support, you feel like you really actually have to make some big choices, you know? And I think that pushed me.
How did you decide the order of the designs? Because you're all very effective and very different stylistically, and it seemed to work well with the progression of the piece, the styles of design. How did you do that?
Well, we had an initial phone conversation, and I based everything off of that. And so with Ray, I got the sense that he was really interested in creating, you know, the base metaphor for how the media would interact with the space and with the characters. And I also saw a little bit of his work at a design conference a year ago. So I felt like he was really grounded and conceptually sort of just like super focused. And so I thought, well, he should start it so that we could like get something, you know, very clear and sort of like installed into the space, you know. And then with Phil, it was like he's clearly interested in not just, you know, what it looks like, but the tools that you use to get there. And so I thought, well, let's give him the part where I think we'll have the most sort of interactive, motion-y sort of stuff, and see what he does with that with like his technical knowledge. And then from the beginning, I knew that Andrew, you know, had a theater company and had a sense of sort of storytelling. And at that point, the roughest part was the ending. And so I thought, well, if he has serious storytelling skills, and I have no idea how we're going to end this piece, this would be a good place to end.
I just wanted to remark that I think it's a success that the piece doesn't feel like three different sections. It's kind of seamlessly developing. So it was interesting to like figure out, okay, who, like, we saw them talking, like trying to guess who did what, but the piece goes, dissolves, develops.
Yeah. How did you guys discuss
is very modular in that it lays out scenes as you would a play. And so it's like, I think the transitions end up being more like lighting choices. It's like, well, do you want to fade from blue to red, or do you want it to go blue to red? So it's sort of, and then Sonatas had obviously requested about the tempo of the shifts and things like that as to how it works out. But the software makes it incredibly easy, thanks to Mark Lupino, to just make those changes in the snap.
And then with Andrew's section and going into it, there was like just a funny moment today where I was like, I think it wants to build itself. And then he was like, could you give me some more verbs than that? And I was like, what do you want me to do here? And so I sort of like looked at these, if you saw the way that it sort of like pasted itself onto the space, like that was definitely one of those moments where like, how do you make this transition so that it doesn't feel like it's just popping into the space, but it's very clear that stylistically we're going into a whole different world, but how do we make that choice seem super on purpose? I'm just curious on the text. Where is it from? Oh yeah. It started off as a monologue we wrote ourselves, and then looked at a month later and decided it was just terrible. And then we're like, well, let's use T.S. Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock as a text. And then about a week, that was what we came in with. And then on the first day we thought, this isn't saying anything. And so then we were like, well, let's, we had some Dostoevsky quotes from Notes on the Underground, so let's just throw that in there and see like what we can do with that. And they're like, wow, he's like super depressed and has no like dream of anything. And then Vincent was like, Battlestar Galactica, that's what we need. And so we pulled out Battlestar Galactica and these like quotes from Marty, right, Vince? Like, yeah, from like the 1950s or something.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh yeah, this guy seems really like, he's sort of depressed, but like could also have like ambition in the future or possibly in the past. And then we just like pasted it together on a Google Drive. And I think like in the development of it from this moment on, we're still interested in the idea that it's like a jungle of found text that generally smart existential people read. And that we're gonna try to make that like a choice, so that you can hear in the way that he says it that he's quoting these like dead people basically. So yeah.
Which is funny because is Kevin here?
Yeah, no dead people.
You got a role in this space.
They don't need the money.
It's all about live artists.
Well, and James said that to me in one of our meetings right before we came in, and I was like, oh God, these oh no, T.S. Eliot's so dead. We better like amp this up with something with Battlestar Galactica.
One thing I was curious about is if the designers could just briefly talk about how you showed up with the assets. Where did the video come from? The images. Do you have like a bag of tricks that you traditionally carry, or did you create them on the spot?
I did the beginning part, so I think, because before that, Instagram sent realness, a very long email talking about the concept and the text and everything on the basis. And then I think I just read all that and I came up with some ideas, and then we talked about it, and then I realized the timeline was really compressed and over, so. But I had some ideas, so I just went back to my content library and pulled some stuff. That's appropriate for the piece, and then recreate it in some way so they can fit into the space. And then.
And you had the idea for the live.
Right. And then, and then the first part was the person in monologue. So, and I was thinking about how to put him in this really contained space without using any scenic elements somehow. And then so I just feel maybe we can just like here and put it in this. Because as we can maybe remember on the beginning of that live beat part, it was like really focus on his body part, and then zoom out and see, so it's like feels like it's like in the cabin, like in columns like this, and then we transition to his monologue talking about watching songs.
I'm trying deliberately as a designer to create assets for each piece, because I feel like a lot of the time people come in with like, here's my box of things, and you can choose one of these things. And I actively try to be like, okay, what do you want? I'll go make it, which doesn't lead to very many long nights of sleep. But and it also ends up, I think, being kind of skeletal. Like a lot of the things that were in my section, which was from the rain to the smoky red that turned into the geometric shapes, like the live feed part, that was like the first step of what would be a long process to develop an aesthetic moment that really brings something to the table, something really specific. So I feel like all of my media was generated, but in a longer process would develop into something, you know, entirely different or much more specific.
Yeah, similarly to Phil, I sort of try to avoid having a bag of things that I know work, so that I'm really tailoring my designs to the piece and to the moments and to the team that I'm working with, from the director and other designers and the actors. And so my sort of like things give showing up with sketches, like literally sketches, and like coding things in the room that we call sketches because they're just being generated live, so that it's all about flexibility and changeability and permeability and interactivity, rather than here's the thing that will eventually be the thing. So like the red pulsing thing that was over here sort of started with this idea of like, she described the sensuality, she wanted to achieve this moment, wanting something that like felt like the in-between of like a red silk dress and a heartbeat is sort of where that started. And then it was built to respond to the song. And then what you saw over here, she had sent a lot of images of like specifically 1970 Chicago. And so I did a quick sketch of the Chicago skyline and then played with, first we came up with it sort of like just we have to see this tower and played with that sort of disintegrating. And then that wasn't interesting, so we evolved that into the whole skyline. And then we changed its pace, and then we came up with this idea that Vincent would reach up and touch it. But then we decided we wanted to justify how it got there. And so then we saw that sort of like paste on thing, which again is just a sketch of what that just would look like in the end. But yeah, that idea didn't even exist literally until I was in the room.
Yeah.
And then the same thing sort of encoding terms particles or like the atomic electrons looking thing that follow Vincent around the space. I mean, again, that's a sketch. I don't think that's anything what that actual object would look like in a final version of the piece, but it was just sort of looking at how something might move, so building in sort of physics simulations like different attractive and repel forces inside of it, so that it would run away from him or be attracted to him, and the dots themselves would move this pulse inside of itself. And that's just sort of like a sketch that was made here and then made to be flexible and run live, so that it eluded him as he ran, and then so that wherever he ended up in his slow walk along this wall, it can stay with him. But yeah, all of the ideas came after I was in the space.
What kind of changes do you think would happen if you had 8 weeks in the same conditions?
If we had 8 weeks in the space,
It would get awesome! It would be amazing! You should give us lots of money!
No money, just space and equipment.
We were given 8 more weeks in the space, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I mean,
in other words, so this would, it sounds like it didn't really like congeal so much as a team, although there sounds like there was a lot of collaboration.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just starting to understand how each of these guys work, you know? And it's interesting how in 8 hours you slowly start to develop a language and you recognize like what words make sense. Like Brianna, I feel like half the time I have no idea what he's saying, he has no idea what I'm saying. But we do this good thing now where we're like, so what you're saying is you want this. And then he like repeats it back to me like, yes, yes. That is what I'm saying. But I think that the most interesting moments were the moments where the media was just like distinctly tied to Vincent, in the sense that like he's looking up at the film, or he's like watching the city get pasted and then goes to touch it and it have to sort of work in this weird way where the media was like being made somewhere else and then brought, and then we figure out how to work with it. And I think the goal would be to like build the media and then get the actors in the space and have them start to interact with it. So it's sort of the opposite of the process. Like this is the palette, or like this is the idea, this is what we are giving you, or like this is the base of what we're giving you. Now how can you use the actors and what's that conversation going to be? And then grow it from there, because I feel like we sort of did the reverse. And that's sort of one of our goals with We Were Wild Ones, is to make it so that the media is like truly a character, so that constantly in rehearsal it's speaking, and then the actors are responding, and then we figure out, given the objective of the media, what it would say back, and to really make that start to become a dialogue. So that, yeah, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, like the general answer is, I feel like we set up a conversation to happen between media and actors, and then sort of the first words they said to each other were the thing you saw.
So like first date versus
marriage. Yeah, versus like, you know, like then you get to testing things out and trying 5 wrong choices and then getting the right choice. And then if you have enough time, you get to like get past the right choice and then get bored with it and then find other things and then find the inevitable choice. And 8 weeks I don't think is enough time to get to the inevitable choice, but I feel like it's enough time to get bored with the right choice and then get
So that's why some people stay for 6 months.
Yeah.
Kevin is very artist, like putting artists in the space in a really generous way, giving them real time and space. And it's odd because we have a problem almost getting people to think like, well, what would I do for like 6 months? And the time just goes so fast. But I was here and I got a chance to see, just in a week, if Sanasa had like 1 day in the space, a lot of times artists get a tech of what? What's the usual tech?
Oh, I have no idea.
But then everything, I mean,
Several hours, maybe a day, but just in a week, she got a chance to change her mind and to try different things. And I think that this was certainly not enough time. I think Kevin would say, for a 15-minute piece, how much time would be generous?
I mean, at least 4 weeks.
4 weeks. And I think what's really odd about artists is we look at it, it's like, oh, 4 weeks, it seems like too long, but it goes really quickly. But that's what this space is about. You had a question.
Yeah, how many cameras were in this what we saw? So it was one over there, and the one over there was tracking.
Yeah, it was a really, really, really rough thing that with Sonata. Yeah. Okay, so what it is so that camera was taking live image. It's basically like a 4-man motion capture where it uses pixel difference. So if we're in a steady light and you move across the room, it's going to act just like a motion capture. But then if you flip on the lights, the camera, all the pixels change, and so the machine using basically difference saying, what does it look like now? What does it look like now? What does it look like now? Goes, everything changed, everything must have moved. No. Infrared would be a much better choice. No, this was like sort of in the moment. It's again like it's a way to slap together something similar to motion capture. And I think a lot of development would go into something that makes that moment a lot clearer. Yeah.
so just for like layman's terms, because
That wasn't clear?
No, it was clear, but in my, like, if I heard that, I'd be like, huh?
Yeah, I don't know.
But literally, like, to someone, you just showed me, which helped, but like, if you go like this, the image, like, copies itself, and goes like here, and follows you all the way up. So it made it feel like, in different lighting, and the other day when we played with it, that 4 people on this space, it made it feel like 15 to 20 people. So it sort of created this multiplicity that was really exciting.
Time for one more question.
I was curious if all of you use Zagora outside of this process, and if you did not, if that came into play as far as this collaboration, and you use it with yourself.
I mean, for me, it's sort of like my own, like my graduate work at NYU was working on it. So for me, it's my first choice if I get a say in what.
I frequently use Isadora, but it's in constant development, and as it is in constant development, it is one of the tools I use. But I try to think in terms of, is there a hardware that does what I need to do? Do I have to write a program from scratch that does what I need to do? Isadora is by far the fastest and most flexible way to approach something like this. For example, the smoke that then turned into the polygons, that's an effect that I set through Isadora, so that it's just taking a live feed and then I can cue it up so you can pull anything and then turn it into those polygons, which is great for things like that. But as you can see, I do a lot of installation work and things, and other fields. So I think Isadora has a certain functionality and a flexibility that is ideal for a theatrical setting. In outside settings, let's say you're doing an installation, you can use Isadora. It just depends on the nature of it.
I think I use Isadora mostly for like sandboxing and prototyping things because I think it's just fast.
Yes.
Just fast. On the other side, Isadora is not very stable in a lot of ways. So, for example, if you finish a show and then using Isadora and then you're gonna run it for like a year, for example, Isadora just not a tool to rely on because it's not very stable. So yeah, so I think it just depends on what kind of work you want to do and then what you're gonna approach. So
I think if I could just one of the interesting things, again, because it's constantly in development, is the stability of Isadora depends on the system you're working on, or the updates that happen, or the updates to Isadora, or the size of the media, or the frame rate of the media, or there's like a million things that go into it, which I think is why it's so convenient in sandboxing, is because you can sort of pull everything in and work with it as you need, and the stability of it becomes, you almost have to use it like as if you were developing from nothing and then building a program if you want it to be this really solid thing, because every element of what goes into it is going to determine how stable it is coming out.
Thank you all for coming. I invite you please approach the June, I'm not sure what it's going to be about, and also in December we're going to have a program called 3LD 336 where we're going to give away a residency of 336 hours to an artist or theatrical group, and I invite you to watch our website, and artists, please apply. Thank you for coming.